Good morning and welcome to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. As we start this morning, we do have breaking news in the NBA. NBA coach Chauncey Billups and player Terry Rozier have been arrested this morning in gambling probes. We are still trying to get as much information as we can throughout the course of this show. We will do that, and we will get you that information as we get it. In fact, Dan Wolken will join us later in the show. We'll get his update and the latest reporting that we can, and we will keep you updated. Sorry, Dan Devine going to be joining us. I don't know what I said. We will get you updated as soon as we get more information. So stick with us as we get more information. You will get more information. What we don't want to do is report on anything until we have something concrete we can report to you, which is what we will do. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Yahoo Sports Daily will start today with NBA news from the court from last night, and it comes in the form of a wild, wild evening. Look, we had a huge night across the association. We're going to talk about a bunch of the games in the three-man weave format. Let's start with Wemby. Victor Wembanyama absolutely was electric last night. You see it there, 40 points, 15 boards. Caroline, I don't know that we've ever seen somebody more athletic at his size, and it was stunning to watch in person.
No, we haven't. We've never seen someone that athletic as at his size. When you are 7'7", 7'5", however tall Victor Wembanyama actually is, it's tall, okay? We've never seen someone at his size move around the way he does, shoot the way he does, play defense the way physical defense, get in the paint, be as physical in the paint as he was last night. And watching that game, it is just staggering. It is wild. It almost feels like you're looking into like a circus funhouse mirror to watch how Victor Wembanyama feels like he is playing a different game than anybody else on the court. I mean, he made Anthony Davis, one of the best defenders in the association, look silly. Victor Wembanyama looked like a man amongst boys. Victor Wembanyama looked like a grown man playing at a little league game. Victor Wembanyama is doing something that I don't think we have ever witnessed before in this sport, and to see it on full display in his debut, I think it's just a peek behind the curtain of more greatness that we are going to see from Victor Wembanyama. I mean, he just totally owned every single moment every time he was out on the court.
It is so hard, Caroline, for something to grab everybody's attention. And one thing you and I have talked a lot about is how do you catch everybody early in the season and make them give a damn about the NBA? It takes something wild. And we talked on this show about why we thought Wemby could be an MVP. In fact, if you look at the MVP odds in the last 24 hours, they have shrunk drastically for a reason, right? Based on what we saw last night. 40 points, 15 plus boards, 75%, and then 0 turnovers in a game. Those sorts of metrics. And when you talk about what it means, that's the sort of thing that catches the world. That's the sort of thing that makes everybody stop. In a time of the year where we're obsessed with the World Series, rightfully so, and we're obsessed with the NFL and college football and all of these things that are already in full swing, how do you capture the world's attention? You do something that we've never seen before. And it's not the stat line. It's not just the stat line. It's the ability on both sides, the fluidity, the athleticism at that size. It's watching him on the court and literally laughing throughout the broadcast because he looks like those graphics you see of a kid in high school that's 2 feet taller than everybody else and the rest of the kids are just trying their damnedest. That's what it looks like. And you watch grown, professional, amazing NBA players doing everything they can to slow him down, and it doesn't work. Like the athleticism, the freak athleticism, combined with his abilities, combined with his size, combined with his mannerisms, I think that's what's taking the world by storm. And that's why, look, Wemby's the exact injection that the NBA absolutely needs right now. You want to get everybody into the beginning of the season, you do what Wemby did last night.
Yeah, I mean, he is going to be one of those athletes. If not, he is already one of those athletes that any time that you are in his atmosphere, you do everything in your power to watch that guy. That's how I feel about Shohei Ohtani. And anytime I have an opportunity to see Shohei Ohtani in person or to watch Shohei Ohtani on TV, you better believe I'm taking that opportunity to watch somebody do something historic. Victor Wembanyama is as special and as much of a spectacle as Shohei Ohtani truly is. But Fitz, that's not the only news that we had in the NBA. You mentioned it off the top. Some staggering news that came out this morning in the NBA. It was initially reported by Shams Charania and Pablo Torre as well, that Chauncey Billups, the head coach of the Portland Trailblazers, has been charged in an illegal poker operation tied to the mafia. And Miami Heat player as well, Terry Rozier, has also been arrested for his involvement in illegal gambling ring. Initial reaction to some of the early reporting that we are hearing on that.
Well, look, the NBA and Adam Silver tried to make it clear over the last few days that investigations were still ongoing, and I think there was some expectation that there might be some action. In fact, that Terry Rozier seems to possibly be tied at this point to some allegations on some illegal betting that was done around a game where he pulled himself out of the game, but there'd been unusual betting activity on the under. He pulled himself out of the game 10 minutes in because of a sore foot, and suddenly all of those bets hit. The first thing that I think whenever I see player-related action that is related to the games that we've seen with betting is this is why guardrails are in place, right? So we live in this conspiracy theory society where everybody constantly wants to say, well, this is rigged and this is fixed and this is rigged. The NBA continues to be very aggressive about identifying places where there is any illegal betting activity. And this is why, again, I will remind athletes and fans that there is now a common technology between all sports books that tracks betting. So the reason this continually gets found is because whether you're placing bets in, Connecticut or you're placing bets in Las Vegas, one system is looking at it and saying, hey, wait a minute, we got a lot of unusual activity on this thing. And it's staggering to me to see that athletes continue to think that they can get away with these things. The systems and guardrails have been put in place specifically to watch athletes at a higher level. So the more we see guys get caught, I would tell everybody, the more that means the systems are working. The more that we see somebody actually go down for anything that they do, should this be an allegation that's proven true, the more that we see that, the more I think we as a sports society can take a deep breath and say, all right, good. Like, we don't want to believe in anything. But when you see active players being arrested for gambling investigations, what that tells you is that guardrails and systems are working, Caroline. That's why they're in place. That's how guys get caught. And to me, it gives me more faith than ever that sports aren't rigged and aren't fixed, because if they were, things like this would just go under the rug. But they don't, because everybody is at some core worried about the integrity of the game. I've never hidden the fact that I'm from Las Vegas. And, my mom was the first woman to be a casino manager in the 70s. Like, no woman had ever held that role. Like, I grew up around casinos. I grew up around betting. I understand sports regulation, I think, at a level that most people don't really give a damn. And I think this is a moment of sports gambling regulation coming out and saying, hey, if you try things and it looks suspicious, we will catch you.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll have some more information coming down the pipe here. There will be a press conference held by FBI Director Kash Patel in less than 1 hour, hoping to get more information on the situation. And what we know right now is just that Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier have both been arrested and are now in custody. Also, it's important to point out that in the court of law, you are innocent until you are proven guilty. I know that's not always the case in the court of public opinion, but we'll see this law and legal process pan out. But this is just another page in the book of proof that leagues, professional leagues, whether it's the NFL, the NBA, so on and so forth, take this incredibly seriously. They uphold the integrity of their leagues and the integrity of their games to the highest degree and to the highest order. The last thing that any commissioner of any league wants to happen or want to come out is that games are rigged, that games are fixed, that coaches or players are actively involved in a financial gain based off of their performance. That is, I think, one of the biggest fears of any commissioner in sports. This is why they are taking it that seriously, because if anything comes out, the games are legitimately being thrown, the games are legitimately, fixed or rigged. Not only does that change our impression as sports fans of the integrity of those leagues, then you have a massive, massive lawsuit on your hands with as much money as being invested into sports books and into sports gambling, legally at least.
Well, there's a level here too where we got to acknowledge that Chauncey Billups. We don't know right now whether Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier have been arrested as part of the same criminal investigation or separate criminal investigations. There are also reports of criminal investigations relating to mafia-tied poker games, and this is where poker gets a little bit it gets a little interesting because I know a lot of people watching, and I know a lot of people that love sports play a lot of poker. I will remind everybody that part of the reason that high dollar poker games there's such an eyeball on them is because, frankly, it's a tax issue, right? When you start talking about money and you talk about money won in poker, what you're talking about is all that money being reported. That's why the more and more regulation exists, the more that what they try to do is get poker games to take place in notable poker places. That's why casinos everywhere build poker rooms, because at the end of the day, it gets tracked and they can see how much money is changing hands. Between money laundering and tax laundering, you look at these poker matchups, you understand that they're not playing poker. When you talk famous people, millionaires, are not playing poker necessarily the same way that you and I are. This isn't $5 buy-in while you have a Miller Lite and you enjoy your day. It's a much different level of poker taking place. So part of what I expect that we will find out is exactly what the FBI believes has taken place with these poker games, especially in relation to the amount of money that's changing hands, to what that could mean, who that money was going to, how that money's being utilized, what it means for the tax situation of everybody. Like, that's real. And at some point, if anybody watching has ever gambled a lot of money, at the end of the year, you get your year-end, whatever your favorite sports book is, you get your year-end statement. And last year, there were tax changes made to those year-end statements and the way that we're all taxed on your gambling wins and losses. That's happening for a reason, because there's more and more gambling in general. The FBI has made it clear that they're going to crack down on poker games that don't happen in the right regulations, and this could be that. We don't know yet. We won't know until 10 a.m. Eastern. But, Caroline, it's a reminder that it's easy for everybody to roll their eyes and say, what are we talking about, poker? We're not talking about poker the way you and I play poker. We're talking about a much different kind of poker.
Talking about a lot more money that's being exchanged. Talking about 6 figures, potentially even 7 figures being exchanged. And you did bring up, the fact that we were talking about 2 separate cases, but ABC News, as you can see here, reported that it is separate but related. I wonder where the wires are being crossed. I wonder where the relation really crosses over. And while we know about these 2 instances as of today, Pablo Torre did point out that we heard about Malik Beasley potentially being involved in some illegal gambling, potentially even gambling on himself, that some sports books had kind of waved a flag and said, maybe there's some strange activity happening here on, I believe it was a Malik Beasley under. So that is another case that, according to all reports from Pablo Torre, that could be involved in the arrests of either Terry Rozier and or Chauncey Billups, to see where those cases are related there. Again, we don't have a ton of information. We have information that's coming out as we speak, that we're kind of flying the plane as we're building it as well. We don't know if these 2, Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups, are in fact guilty of illegal gambling or a gambling ring. But what we do know is this is going to be taken incredibly seriously, Fitzy.
Well, and this, Caroline, is why, if there's one reason I think NBA fans should be concerned, I would say it's this. This is the NBA spokesman, Mike Bass, said earlier this year, quote, in March 2023, the NBA was alerted to unusual betting activity related to Terry Rozier's performance in a game between Charlotte and New Orleans. The league conducted an investigation and did not find a violation of NBA rules. We are now aware of an investigation by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York related to this matter and have been cooperating with that investigation. The one caveat here, as someone that just said guardrails are in place, if the NBA investigated it and found nothing, and the FBI investigated it and found something, we have a problem, right? Like, because at the end of the day, like, what the one thing that we all we need in these investigations is transparency, because there is not a lot of trust anymore between professional sports leagues and fans, especially because we all can open our favorite app and bet a lot of money on player props. It becomes really, really tough when you don't trust that the league is policing the way that the players play properly. If you believe that there are players getting away with adjusting these props based on their performance, boy, it makes it tougher and tougher. And now knowing that every professional sports league is in bed with some gambling partner somewhere, you have to be even more transparent than ever. The egg on the face that could come today would be if the NBA knew or didn't think it rose to the level of a problem, but the FBI doesn't agree with that. That's a line in the sand that gets really uncomfortable for the league, that gets really uncomfortable for all of the fans, that gets really uncomfortable for the betting partners. And it's why I continue to say, Caroline, in today's society, in a social media where nobody trusts anybody, everybody thinks that every news outlet is out to get them, and everybody believes in conspiracy theories everywhere. It is more important today than it has ever been in history to be wildly transparent about anything that can be even perceived as wrongdoing. So the NBA should be a little bit puckered up here, because when we hear from the FBI, which we will at press conference taking place at 10 a.m. Eastern, when we hear from the FBI, my first question is going to be, does the FBI reporting match the NBA's reporting? And if it doesn't, why not?
That's an important differentiation, because we were talking about the FBI, and the NBA. You cannot be arrested if you are found guilty in the court of the NBA. That the burdens of proof may be totally and completely different, are totally and completely different when you're talking about a court of law and the FBI versus the NBA. You bring up distrust. That if there is something that comes up that the FBI found that the NBA may have sloughed off and said was not important, that is going to only add to the level of distrust that sports fans have in professional leagues. You compound that with the Kawhi Leonard and aspiration situation that Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, at least publicly, at least in press conferences, did not address the aspiration accusations of cap circumvention with a level of seriousness that I would have expected a league commissioner would have addressed that kind of situation with. That starts to add to distrust. Okay, well, if Adam Silver is just going to throw this under the rug, if the NBA isn't going to inspect the alleged cap circumvention from Clippers owner Steve Ballmer with a level of, of detail, then how much cap circumvention is going on behind the scenes? This is yet another potential chapter in the NBA not holding the league to a standard that maybe fans would expect or would hope. That only adds to the level of distrust. Now, I know that distrust in the NBA is a completely different story, isn't nearly as important as the FBI and the court of law, but still, I think that should be that one of the biggest concerns of the NBA is the integrity of the shield.
From the outside looking in, it's much tougher for the NBA to bring for the FBI to bring charges than it is for the NBA to sit back and say we did something wrong. Like, the burden of proof is much higher in a criminal case than it is in a civil case. So the burden of proof should be much higher for the FBI than it is the NBA. You're right. It's hard not to tie all of these things together with the NBA, which will only feed more conspiracy theorists that don't believe or trust in Adam Silver and the league. We will hear from the FBI this morning at 10 a.m. What we will do on this show is we will continue to scour to get every ounce of information we can, and we will bring you all of that information as we get it. We're going to take a quick break. We are just getting started. More Yahoo Sports Daily coming at you in just a minute. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. Caroline Fenton, I'm Jason Fitz, and right here with us out of the gates, Dan Devine. We have breaking news this morning for anyone that is just tuning in. Controversy in the NBA, legal news. Portland Trail Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups has been charged in an illegal poker operation tied to the mafia. He has been arrested this morning. In addition to that, that's not the only. Terry Rozier has also been arrested as part of a gambling inquiry. The FBI will speak at 10 a.m. We will keep you updated. Dan, right out of the gates, your initial reaction to this breaking news this morning?
I think we've been waiting for the other shoe to drop on the Terry Rozier investigation for quite some time. You know, there had been some uncertainty over whether he'd been exonerated or cleared or was just no longer a person of interest at the moment. But that was sort of on the back burner simmering. And I think we'd been wondering when we'd get some clarity on that. I don't know that anybody anticipated that Chauncey Billups' name would come into this situation. I'm imagining that the Portland Trail Blazers, who extended the contract of Chauncey Billups, did not anticipate that when they inked him to a new deal this summer, coming off of their season opener last night. It's I think, a breathtaking and bracing news bulletin this morning. And I think the idea that you're looking at multiple reports saying that these are separate but related incidents, cases that are being pursued simultaneously, I think it also invites a question about I think it was 4 months ago, Gilbert Arenas being arrested in what was reported as a high stakes illegal poker operation as well. To what degree are these things connected? We don't know. We're going to hear more from the FBI later this morning. But my initial reaction is we've heard a few names, and I have to wonder how many more we might wind up hearing before all's said and done.
You mentioned another case that's brought up here. We've also heard potential reports that Malik Beasley, we heard some allegations coming back out this past summer. How could this be related as well, from what we know?
Yeah, I mean, what the issue is what we don't know, right? I mean, what we've seen is it seems to be the tip of the iceberg, and then the question is just like how far down and how widespread. And so we've had, over the course of the past couple of years, there was the Jonte Porter investigation that led to his lifetime ban from the NBA. We had the Malik Beasley investigation, which resulted in not no immediate finding of fact, but certainly scuttled his summer and his plans, and then raised questions about what his future in the league would look like. There was the Gilbert Arenas situation earlier this summer, and now we have this. It sort of beggars belief that these things are all discrete, separate entities. I think the indication from the initial reporting that these are the cases we're talking about this morning involving Terry Rozier, Chauncey Billups, and former Cleveland Cavaliers player and assistant coach Damon Jones, that these are separate but related inquiries, leads you to imagine that the Beasley case could be involved in this. But yeah, without more information directly from the principals involved, we don't know that for sure at this point. We're left with a lot of space to kind of fill and dots to connect on our own, and hopefully more information will help us do that a little more cleanly soon.
Dan, in full transparency, when we started the show, I said every time guardrails work, I'm reminded that it's great that we have guardrails. Like, I think it's actually a success story every time we find somebody that's breaking the rules, because it means, hey, systems are in place. But I'm also troubled by the fact that all indications have been that the NBA kind of said, hey, nothing to see here. And then the FBI's coming in saying, but wait, there is something. So at some point, does the NBA have to come out and be more transparent in what their investigation looks like to calm down all the conspiracy theorists that are going to simply say the game is constantly rigged?
I think I'm of two minds about that. I think one, just based on the way that Adam Silver and the league office have operated since he's been in control of the league, we simply haven't seen them rush to judgment or rush to produce finding of fact without having all their T's crossed and I's dotted in any instance, right? They going, whether it's something as perhaps not major legal issue as Kawhi Leonard and the aspiration tree planting saga and the no-show job thing, or more significant things in terms of, domestic violence or partner violence issues, or, illegal gambling. The league office primary party line has generally been, we believe in due process. We believe in performing thorough investigations. We believe in allowing law enforcement to do its work and then, picking up the trail after that. So I imagine that the league's response from this will be similar. We'll say, we start from a first principle of we don't rush because we could, stumble over something, break something that you can't fix if you do that. So the FBI leading the dance here. The NBA has, I think it's instructive that after all of the different steps in the Malik Beasley issue this summer, the league did not take any sort of firm stance saying he's not going to be able to be on a roster. He is cleared to be on the league has kind of fallen back on that. I think that will be remain the operative principle, because if you go too far in one direction, if you make too firm a stance in one way, and then the facts as they come out reveal a different outcome, you put yourself in a potentially dangerous position. Adam Silver is at base and forever a lawyer. I don't think that he's going to necessarily rush to do that.
We know that the court of law and the court of public opinion are two very, very different things. But looking at the court of public opinion, do you feel like the strength of the integrity of the NBA is compromised?
I think that it certainly doesn't help the notion that the league saw, as many companies have, as many industries have, saw the legalization of sports gambling as a revenue faucet to turn on and let run, and in very specific ways that are like entwined in the business and presentation of the NBA. And putting that genie back in the bottle is not particularly easy. I think we've seen downstream effects across culture, across society, of the potential danger of having a sportsbook in your pocket at every moment, and what that can be for people who don't see those guardrails, or perhaps are not aware of the existence of the bright lines they're not allowed to cross, or just cross them anyway. And that can be challenging and result in some really negative outcomes in a lot of directions. And so I think the point of, as Jason was saying, the guardrails on something like the Jonte Porter situation, right, where you say there was information that led you to believe there was some problematic wagering going on, that was potentially a market being manipulated. And so the league captured that, saw that, made an evaluation, did an investigation, came to a ruling, and banned a player. That's an indication of a system working. I think the multiple indications of that there's more things that need to be caught. It's certainly reasonable that would lead a consumer to just say, like, hey, is everybody doing this? How many people aren't betting on games or using inside information to gain some kind of edge or potentially enrich themselves in some other capacity? I can't blame any fan that looks at this and says something stinks. And I think you're absolutely right. Yes, the court of law is one thing. The court of public opinion is quite another. And the more stories like this that we see, I think the more it shakes the belief that what we're seeing is on the level. And once you lose that, it's really difficult to go back.
That's, I think, the hardest part. Like, we'll speak in political terms here. Like, politics always talk about eroded trust. It feels like these sorts of moments erode trust. But to be clear, gambling on the NBA is against the rules in the collective bargaining agreement. So, like, it's not like there's some rule they can put in place. What can the NBA do to fix this and stop this moving forward?
I imagine that's a conversation that's happening at Olympic Tower right now, and has been happening for quite some time. The honest answer is, when something is legal and available to everybody at the touch of a button at all times, it's not exactly easy to erect those guardrails, right? You're absolutely right. You can note that these players are contractually prohibited from gambling on their own sports, or gambling on other sports inside the building, or the different various ways that these things are prohibited. And that doesn't necessarily stop everybody. And it leads to I think a question of integrity and hypocrisy about, like, how you can say this pool of money is great for us to have coming in one way, but you can't participate in it in another. But that's why the contracts in the CBA are set up the way that they are, to make that clear, where those lines are. I don't know, is my honest answer. I don't know how the NBA walks this back. I don't know how the NBA plugs these leaks in the dam. I think the hope was, and remains, and will continue to be, this is a rounding error in terms of people, a small number that will engage in this and then put themselves in position to be caught. It becomes more difficult when now you are talking about, like, multiple former players, current players, and a coach. And now that invites questions about, I don't know, the many, many members of staff, of a team personnel that are not making millions of dollars that might have access to similar information and might have more of an incentive to participate in some of these markets. So once you pull the thread, an awful lot starts to unravel. And once you start following the money on it, you can wind up in some awfully curious places.
Yeah, it's great work by you, and we appreciate your insight 100%. I will remind everybody, Terry Rozier, according to the internet, has made $160 million in his career. And according to the reports, this is about $13,000 that was gambled. So it just doesn't make sense. I can't make the math make sense. Dan, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your brilliance and your insight. If you hear anything else, feel free to hop back on. We'll let you get back to doing all of the digging that you can possibly do. Thanks for coming in, answering the bat phone, and making us smarter this morning.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Dan.
Check out the big number. Obviously, Dan Devine doing great work there. I want to let you guys know, a quick update here. At 10 a.m., there will be an FBI press conference. We are going to cover that press conference live on Yahoo Sports Daily. We are going to take that press conference and give you all of the information we can possibly get you on the breaking news. If you're just tuning in, this is what we know. We know right now that Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups both have been arrested as part of separate but possibly related gambling instances in the NBA. We will take that press conference at 10 a.m. Eastern. We will get you the best information we can as we get it. In the meantime, we will change gears for just a second. We are going to be joined by Notre Dame's Jeremiyah Love. Let's talk to one of the biggest stars in college football about a great season that he's having right now. There were some words exchanged between Notre Dame and USA players between plays tonight. Typical for a rivalry game. What was said, Jeremiyah Love can't say, but he offered this. They weren't good conversations. I can't imagine. Hopefully we're about to have a great conversation now with the best running back in the country. He joins us, Jeremiyah Love. Thanks for being here, man. Now, you're joining us on behalf of IC Hot. Got to get to that. We will get to that, but I got to start here. 24 carries, 228 yards, touchdown. What did it mean to have that sort of a game, particularly against that team?
Man, it meant a lot, Notre Dame and USC been playing for a very long time. And, I feel very blessed and honored to, be able to play in that rivalry game and, up the record for Notre Dame. But being able to have that type of performance on that day was just a testament to the preparation and the things that we did as a team to make sure that we went out there and were ready to, execute whatever our coaches, called, and just execute the game plan and go out there and, just have a good time. But yeah, it meant a lot. I wasn't able to do that without my teammates, without my O-line, without my receivers, without CJ, without the defense, without my whole team, just playing complimentary football, and ultimately just led us to getting a victory, and then obviously the real nice performance.
Yeah, I can hear it. You know, you're giving so much credit to your team. I know that you are a team first guy, but that performance on that stage against that rivalry team, I mean, 228 yards and a touchdown on the ground, plus even more through the air. Your name is getting said a lot in the Heisman conversation. You're getting a lot of Heisman Trophy buzz. I know the ultimate goal is a team goal and a national championship, but I'll give you the floor. I will give you the opportunity to make your case to all Heisman voters out there to why you should win the Heisman Trophy.
I'll keep it simple. You know, to all the people who are out there, the voters or whatever, just I would say just look at my game, look at my play style, and I'm gonna go out there and just do what I do every single week. And if you think that's worthy enough for me to win the Heisman, then that's great. But whether I win the Heisman, whether I don't, I'm just gonna go out there and just do what I do and just be me. And if you think that's worthy enough, then that's great.
And every Heisman Trophy winner, it feels like they have that Heisman moment, that highlight reel moment. We see a lot of this from you in the end zone. But what's the best feeling as a running back? Is it trucking a defender? Is it breaking some ankles? Is it that, long run when all you see is green grass ahead? What's the best feeling for you and the best play to make, in your opinion?
For me personally, I would say the best feeling, it's actually when I'm blocking. Like been a couple plays this season where like I've like stoned somebody and CJ throws for like a nice little touchdown. I think it happened against who was it? I think it was either against NC State or Boise State. One of the two games I made a pretty nice block and like absolutely stoned the guy and CJ threw for a touchdown. That's really like my favorite play is like a running back. Just like it's not actually like with me having the ball because that stuff just comes natural. And just things that I do. But whenever I can do something to help my teammates, get some spotlight, that's what I like the most. Just being able to help my teammates and stuff just shine.
All right,
Pass
be
pro
real with me
isn't
for a second.
passive. That's what they say.
Come,
Sure.
let's be honest for a second though. Like the hurdling thing, I mean, I don't know how you get that level of athletic ability. When do you have to decide I'm hurdling this dude? Because you can't make that like you got to have a step or two before you decide you're hurdling. Like when do you figure it out?
It's already predetermined. Like I'll predetermine it way before like I even see a guy. Like with that play, I'm like I'm gonna hurdle somebody. And whether you go lower or whether you're up high is already predetermined that I'm gonna do it. So I guess you just got to figure out when when I'm thinking about doing it. But yeah, it's just predetermined. It's not really like it was an in the moment thing, but now like since I know how to like do it so well, it's really just predetermined because whether you go low or whether you stay a little bit high, I can still pretty much get over you. So yeah.
You're playing real life like the rest of us are playing video games. Okay, so let's talk about this season. Okay, it started 0-2, and obviously that's not where you wanted the season to start. That means everybody like me with the microphone starts yelling, "Well, Notre Dame's got to run the table to make the college football playoff." How much pressure have you guys felt because of the start to try and get your backs again out of this corner?
Um, I feel like we would have had the pressure whether we started off 0-2 or not. We're at the University of Notre Dame. We're winners, really. Like we want to win every single game. So whether or not we lost those first two games, we would have been playing like our backs were against the wall anyway. So as of right now, man, our mindset is to just go out there and start off the week. We're 0-0 and let's end the week 1-0. So we put our heads down every single week. We work, we make sure they're preparing the right ways, make sure we're recovering, and, so that we have the best chance that we have or can have to go out there and just, achieve some team glory. But yeah, I mean, we pretty much have the same mindset whether or not we start off the season 0-2 or 2-0.
And that mindset comes from your head coach. What's it like playing for Marcus Freeman?
It's great. I love Coach Free. I can really connect with him, and I feel like all the other players on his team can connect with him really well. He's a young coach, so he understands us. I feel like a little bit more than older coaches can. Obviously he's a great father, just a great human being in general. And, being able to play under somebody or play for somebody like him, it means a lot. I want to make him look good as a head coach, and he wants to make us look good as players. So, I love him, and, I hope to just continue to grow in our relationship, maybe spend some more time with him on some trips or whatever. But, yeah, I love Coach Free. And, yeah.
I don't know what had the internet more sort of talking this week. Coach Freeman in a hat, which we're not used to, or your end zone celebration, which supposedly got you on the Heisman film. Like, what's going on here? Did you actually make the Heisman film according to what Coach said on Bustin' with the Boys?
I did make the I did make the Wiseman film. Um, I mean, that celebration, it's not it's not what it looks like. It's really not what it looks like. I was trying to do like a dance that I seen. I was trying to do a dance, or like it's like kind of like an emo or whatever. And it didn't turn out the way that it was supposed to. But yeah, I did make the Wiseman. Probably will never do that again. Yeah, most likely will never do that again. But yeah, I did make the Wiseman, and it's just a teaching moment.
I was watching that game right when the camera panned to you doing that. I was doing like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme, like, what's he doing? What's he doing in the end zone there?
Yeah.
Like here, that celebration or any of your touchdown celebrations or win celebrations may make it to the NFL and play on Sundays. It's what we do is we talk about draft prospects and we evaluate the big boards, the Mel Kipers of the world, and Mel Kiper has you as the number 2 player in this NFL draft class. What does that mean to you?
It means a lot, for people to just see just my skill and the potential that I could have or that I have. So it means a lot, seeing people just put me as high or put me on that type of pedestal. But at the end of the day, I got to finish out this season strong. And then when that time comes, that time comes where I have to worry about that. But yeah, it feels great, seeing other people just believe in me. And yeah, I'm just let that be noise for now because I still got a season to end or a season to go on. Still got work to put on, and yeah, great feeling, but I got to keep working.
I mean, Jeremiah, you're young. I'm old. When you get to my age, icy hot is part of your life. Like every time I go to the gym, I just bathe myself in icy hot. All right, so tell everybody what you're doing with icy hot, why it's helping you. Man, I need all the help I can get at my age. Let's go.
So, yes, I'm a partner with Icy Hot. Icy Hot is also the official partner with Notre Dame. They're official partner with Notre Dame, so like it's always around. And I use it for my recovery. I also use it for like pregame stuff, just for whenever I'm feeling like a little sore, a little achy, or I feel like I need to be, loosened up a little bit. I use Icy Hot pregame, and then postgame for recovery and stuff like that. Wherever I'm feeling sore, where I'm just feeling beat up, apply some icy hot there and shoot, I'm feeling brand new. But yeah, icy hot it's become a crucial part of my just routine in general because this season I've been getting a little bit more workload. So I gotta find better ways to recover, and icy hot has just been a great way for me to do that. And yeah, they're official partner with Notre Dame. I'm partnering with them, and I just hope to grow in this relationship with them.
Look, this doesn't surprise me at all. I was surprised to learn. I did a little research. All right, I reached out. Mike Golick Jr., my longtime friend, longtime Notre Dame guy, told me the one thing I had to ask you about was your love of anime. Okay, so like this just is a little shocking. All right, Jeremiah, it's a little shocking. I did not think Jeremiah Love was going to be an anime fanatic. So like, what's our comic book situation look like then?
So, comic talk comic books. So I just released a comic book. It's called Jeremiah Star. Reason that I wanted to do a comic book was because as you said, I love anime. I've been watching and reading manga ever since I was about 7 years old. So I just thought the perfect way for me to connect with people in like my own way was, release like a comic. It initially was my dad's idea, but like once he like introduced it to me, I was like, that's a great idea because I do love anime, I do love comics, I do love manga. So why not, just create something to connect with people, but also it's a way to give back to football because the Jeremiah Star story is about me growing up playing football, and the whole theme and the whole message of the comic is really to I really want to instill like certain values in like kids or people in general of like to never give up, be yourself, stuff like that. But also, just have fun along the way. That's a comic, but just talking about anime in general, I've been watching anime since I was about 7 years old. We got a bye week this week, so I'm gonna go home and I'm going to go to the movies and I'm gonna watch the new Demon Slayer movie. It came out a little minute ago, so I'm a little late, but I'm going to go see that. And yeah.
That's
No doubt a
awesome.
Heisman finalist, no doubt the most interesting man in college football. There's just no doubt. We're just cementing these things. Man, we appreciate your time. Congratulations on an incredible season. Can't wait to see the next end zone dance, but more importantly, keep crushing it all season long, brother. We appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We appreciate his time on a big morning. Thanks to Jeremiyah Love. Coming up next, we're going to get back to the breaking news in the NBA this morning as Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier, and more have now been arrested as part of gambling investigations. The FBI will speak soon. We'll tell you about it more coming up next. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. Former NBA player and coach Damon Jones was arrested Thursday in connection with an illegal gambling case per NBC News. Jones played in the league from 1999 to 2009, later spent 3 seasons as a Cavs assistant coach. That is the latest domino to fall because earlier this morning, we also saw the arrest of Terry Rozier, Miami Heat player, and Portland Trailblazers coach Chauncey Billups this morning, both in connection to gambling investigations that we do not yet know if they're related. We know, according to reports, that it appears that Chauncey Billups is part of a poker investigation, and we don't know the full extent yet of what Terry Rozier has been arrested for. We just know previous investigations were around allegations of possible impact to player prop betting by the player. So we are going to effort and try and give you that press conference. The FBI is going to speak at 10 a.m. Eastern, Caroline, and this is just another domino falling in what looks like is going to be a wild morning of news for the NBA.
Yeah, ABC did report that Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups arrests are separate but related. So and we can, speculate if Damon Jones was and his arrest is related to those other two as well. There's also been some speculation and some reporting by Pablo Torre that Malik Beasley's investigation that happened earlier this summer is also related in this case as well. So I do think, Fitz, at this point, now that we have 3 names coming out today, Terry Rozier, Chauncey Billups, and now Damon Jones, in relation to Malik Beasley's investigation earlier this summer, I think it is fair of us to question. It's fair of us to speculate. What's the next domino to fall? Is there another domino to fall? Because if we've now had 3 names, in less than an hour, fair to speculate that there are more players, former players, current players, former coaches that are related to these arrests as well. Just how far does this web go? Just how deep are the roots in this alleged gambling ring?
And that's where we keep talking about eroding trust. But I mean, what keeps coming to my brain is the bigger this is, the bigger this will be remembered by history, the more it will be remembered by history. Like just the fact that every time a ref misses a call in the NBA, immediately somebody brings up the one name of one official that went to jail for fixing games, right? Like every time a player suddenly comes out of a game, it'll be like, well, let's check the betting. I continue to scream guardrails are in place. But Caroline, doesn't this have to be part of what the NBA and every sports league had to anticipate the minute that they went into bed with sports books? Like when you become a partner of sports books all over the place and when you just affiliate the way that leagues have, because as was pointed out earlier by Dan Devine, like you saw it as a faucet of revenue, right? Like we're going to affiliate with these gambling partners. That's fine. You have to then say if this, then that. And the if this, then that is going to be, well, man, every time a sports book makes money off of these things, you just got to wonder, it doesn't matter what Pandora's box was opened. The fact is the NBA is in some level complicit for opening it because they chose to form these partnerships.
I disagree. And I disagree vehemently. And I think that's a feeling that a lot of sports fans have is, well, it's incredibly hypocritical for the NBA or the NFL or any professional league to be receiving millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars from these sports books and then turn around and punish and discipline players for being involved in those sports books. And to that, I say, those are the rules. The NBA says you cannot bet on the NBA. The NFL says you cannot bet on the NFL, and you cannot bet on the NFL on NFL grounds, whether that's a practice facility or in a stadium. Those are the rules. That I don't blame the NBA for doing business with insert sports book here and then punishing an NBA player for breaking the rules. Nobody has any issue with any professional league having a partnership or a sponsorship with let's say an alcoholic beverage company. Nobody says, well, if a player gets arrested for a DUI, well, that's the fault of the NBA for having alcoholic beverage ads on their programs or on the court or having sponsorships with them. No, the onus is on the players. These are the rules. It is the responsibility of a player to follow these rules. These are grown men that make a lot of money and that have to abide by rules of the league. The onus is not on the league for having partnerships with sportsbooks. The onus is on the players and on the coaches for breaking league rules.
I agree with you completely. As somebody that has never hidden my love of edibles and cannabis in general, I also have said for years, I toured in a band that didn't allow that. And so it doesn't really matter if I'm a state where it's legal. The rules for that was like, hey, you're not allowed to have that. So you just make that acceptable.
Rules are the rules.
I've had this argument with professional athletes for years that have lived in places that had legalization of marijuana. And they'd say, well, it's legal. I should be able to smoke it. Well, no, you're part of a union. The union collectively bargains these things. So if you want it, collectively bargain it. I hear you on that. I think where the NBA, because I agree with everything you just said, I think where the NBA does have some responsibility is understanding the inevitability of perception. And so then it becomes about transparency.
Yes.
Right? So I think where the NBA does have a responsibility is to turn around and say, if we're going to take this money, then we need to understand that people are going to question whether anything is authentic from now on. And if people are going to question that, then we need to get ahead of it and making sure we're as transparent as possible, so that people understand that we are above reproach, that we are doing everything the right way, that we are finding the bad apples, and we are making sure that these things don't happen. I mean, at the end of the day, the NBA's partnership with the sportsbook isn't the real issue here. I think part of what we have to just accept is the difference in society. 20 years ago, there were very few places you could go to place a bet. So if you were an NBA player, going somewhere to place a bet 20 years ago was far more difficult, and you risked far more because you'd be seen walking up and down the strip. If you're Michael Jordan, you'd be seen walking up and down the strip. Now everybody's got a connection to an app. Everybody's got some way that they could just pop it on their phone. It's become so readily available. I think where the NBA has sort of, maybe, and all sports leagues at some level, bury their head in the sands, is you understand that if it's more readily available than ever and players are going to have access to it all the time, then you need to be really transparent in what your guardrails are and how your investigations run. I'll continue to say, if these players are all arrested and found guilty for whatever they've done with gambling, I don't think that's a reflection of the league at all. If we find out that the league investigated and did a half-assed job of it, now we have an issue. The FBI is not going to have the same level of silence in their investigation that the NBA has. That's the risk that the league takes. I agree with you that the following the rules is not their problem. But I think that they have to be very transparent in the process, because you just have to accept, right or wrong, nobody trusts anything anymore.
Right, and because there are a lot of no-nos that are readily available, and that is, the responsibility of the player to follow the rules and to have the discipline to not engage in said no-nos, whether they're incredibly difficult or incredibly easy to do. Sports gambling has never been easier than it is right now. All I have to do is open up my phone and press one button and can place a bet. But I can do that because there are no rules and no laws against me doing those things. The players need to know what is against the rules and what isn't, and to follow those rules. But perception is key here. And I think you bring up a very good point of perception of integrity and perception of authenticity is the most important thing. Actually having authenticity and integrity is the most important thing for these sports leagues. But if the perception amongst fans and the consumers of your product is that your product is not authentic, well, then you are no better than WWE. No disrespect to WWE, but we all know what WWE is. We can fall in love with the storylines. We can fall in love with the falseness of it. But that's not the NBA. The NBA is that this league has integrity and that this league is authentic. So if you don't have that, you don't have anything. If the perception is that you don't have it, then you don't have anything.
That's the biggest part of it, is just, I think you have to accept where you are, and you have to accept where the modern landscape is. And if things are going to be more readily available than ever to players that are against the rules, then you have to track for it. And I think the guardrails are working. I keep saying that. But I think you also have to be so clear to the world about what those guardrails are and how you're doing it. This is what we're going to do on this show. The FBI is going to have a press conference at 10 a.m. Eastern. We are going to effort to bring you that press conference live and get your reaction from that press conference as it happens. So this story is just breaking. We're about 3 minutes away from getting real, concrete information from the FBI, and we will cover it all. Don't go anywhere. More Yahoo Sports Daily coming at you. We will cover the FBI press conference with you in just a couple of minutes, as this is a wild morning in the NBA. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. We have breaking news this morning in the NBA as we found out this morning that Chauncey Billups, the head coach of the Portland Trailblazers, and other players at this point, we now have multiple players that have been arrested this morning as part of a gambling investigation. We're getting the latest breaking news as we go. So we are trying to get you to this as we get it. You are looking right there at the podium of where the press conference will come. Terry Rozier, by the way, the biggest name that so far that we found out has been arrested as part of gambling investigations in the NBA. Now, when the FBI begins that press conference, we will take you directly there. You will hear exactly what the latest information is on all of this, as it has been an absolute whirlwind this morning, Caroline. Obviously, there are going to be a million questions that we need answers to on what exactly, because as has been reported, these are separate but related incidents. We expect to get more information. We should also note here, though, that what we are going to get is the FBI's information, not the NBA's. So no matter what happens through the course of this, the next step is likely going to be hearing from Adam Silver and the association.
And I think the important thing to point out here is the FBI has zero responsibility to protect the NBA. The FBI has all of the responsibility to protect the Constitution and the laws of the United States. So these are two very different conversations that we are going to be having here. The FBI's findings, the FBI's reportings versus how the NBA responds to it. Because at this point, there is no NBA investigation that is more important or that will show us more than what the FBI is going to show us. And I do wonder here in the press conference just how much information we are going to get. Are we going to find just how deep this goes, how far this reaches, how long this has been going on, maybe some other potential names that could be involved in this? Because I think that's another important thing, Fitz, is how long has this alleged gambling ring gone on? How long have these, alleged sports gambling, involvements gone on? Has it been just over the past couple of months? Has it been something that goes back several years? Because I think how long this has gone back and how deep this goes could reveal just how maybe how the NBA has approached some of these investigations. I think we're going to learn a lot, not just about the involvement of the players and the coaches and the former players and former coaches that have allegedly been involved in this, but also how the NBA has handled it as well. Now, everyone is innocent until proven guilty, but it is fair to say that there's a growing distrust in the integrity of the National Basketball Association.
A reminder that sportsbooks in multiple states flagged suspicious betting interest on Rozier, and that was back in the Charlotte Hornets New Orleans Pelicans game on March 23rd, 2023. The FBI is speaking. We will take you there right now.
Joseph Nocella. Then FBI Director Kash Patel will speak. He will then turn the podium over back to U.S. Attorney Nocella, who will go over a detailed summary of both indictments. Following U.S. Attorney Nocella, it will be FBI Assistant Director in Charge Christopher Raya, R-A-I-A. He's in charge of the FBI's New York field office. He will be followed by Homeland Security Investigations Special Agent in Charge Ricky Patel. And after Ricky Patel, Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch will deliver remarks. There will be some other people standing up here at the podium who will not have speaking roles. You may recognize some of them. It'll be Chief of Detectives Joe Kenny will be up here, but he will not make remarks. Homeland Security Investigations Special Agent in Charge Mike McCarthy from Newark will be standing up here also. And the Executive Director of the Waterfront Commission, Phoebe Sorial, will also be up here but not make remarks. The U.S. Attorney is going to introduce them in his welcoming remarks. We will take some questions after all of the speakers have finished speaking. We're not going to take any off-topic questions. We're just taking questions on the two indictments here today. The indictments are unsealed right now, so we have copies of the, well, it looks like most of them are gone now, but there were copies of the indictments and the detention letter on that table. and I'm going to email them out to everyone on our media list as well. You will see that in the detention letter, which is the organized crime case, the rigged poker game case, there are pictures in that filing. You're free to use the pictures that are in the filing, or if you want JPEG copies of the pictures, we've put them in a Dropbox. So if you want the JPEG versions of those pictures, send me an email, and I'll send you an invitation to the Dropbox, so you'll have access. You can then download those pictures, okay? And as to probably two of the defendants here that are getting the most media interest, Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier, they're going to appear in federal courts in the districts where they were arrested. Terry Rozier will be appearing in federal court in Orlando, Florida, sometime this afternoon. I can't tell you precisely, but sometime around 1 or 2 o'clock. Chauncey Billups in federal court in Portland. I don't know approximately what time that would be. They will both be arraigned on their indictments. They're in separate indictments, but they'll be arraigned on their indictments here in Brooklyn at a future date. The defendants that were arrested here in our area will be arraigned across the street sometime this afternoon. I believe there's about 31 people in custody, and there will be some who will self-surrender. So that's where things stand right now. Okay, so I'm going to go get the speakers, and we'll start in a couple of minutes, okay? Anybody have any questions? Your email address? It's John, John, Marzulli, Marzulli, at usdoj.gov. Thank you. Okay, see you in a couple of minutes. Can you spell your last name again? Marzulli.
Again, right there, you're watching the FBI press conference live. We're going to continue to cover it throughout the course of the morning. This FBI press conference, as they just laid out, we'll have several speakers. In Caroline, they also made it very clear that they only intend to hear to talk, I should say, about Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups as the focus of these investigations. So both will appear in court today. This is just the beginning of getting information.
Yeah, and I think another thing that he pointed out was we are going to see at some point real tangible evidence of photos taken from an alleged illegal poker ring, which was the reason why, or cited why, Chauncey Billups was arrested this morning. So we have real and actual tangible evidence. And if there are photos, and this is something that clearly the FBI has been following at least for quite some time. You don't send photographers out to take photos of something that you just randomly stumble upon. So we have actual tangible evidence there, which I think is important in this conversation, that this isn't something that was, hastily done. This isn't something that happened overnight. This is an investigation that has been ongoing for quite some time now.
And understanding that while we talk so much about players and their ability to impact their own player props, that's obviously part of this. Chauncey Billups, being involved from a coaching standpoint, would have access to what they consider in sports to be insider information. Much like the stock market, you can't let people know things that aren't publicly known that could impact somebody's ability to make money. So that's an issue here. We're going to go back to the FBI. It sounds like we've got them back, I believe. We'll take you back. And throughout the course of this, as we hear from people, we will get you to each of them. Go ahead, Caroline.
Yeah, and important to point out as well, even if it's not, a player directly on the court that might be, allegedly fixing games, insider information is just as much fixing games or questioning the integrity of a game just as much as an actual legitimate player, because that is incredibly sensitive information, whether it's injury information or whether it's classified information about illness or anything that could affect the performance of a player one way or another. That kind of information is just as valuable as an actual player on the court that is actually playing. So that is information that a head coach like Chauncey Billups in the NBA would have. That is information that Damon Jones has allegedly been sharing. Now, the FBI will not comment on Damon Jones. That's the latest development that we have, that former NBA player and former Cleveland Cavaliers coach Damon Jones has also been arrested by the FBI in connection with the charges being announced about Terry Rozier and about Chauncey Billups. That information being shared is incredibly sensitive and valuable information as well.
Which, for a point of reference for anyone that doesn't know, is part of the reason why reporters that cover teams are also blocked from the ability to gamble on games. For example, if you cover an NFL team, you are not allowed to place any NFL bets. So just so you, for understanding here, the reason is you're trying to protect, well, I saw somebody at practice, he was hobbled, and maybe the other team doesn't know about it, and this is an opportunity to go place a bet early. Also, as you noted, the FBI did say in the initial statement at the stand that there is photo evidence. So we'll see where that leads. We also are going to be hearing from several different people. So it's a reminder that, Caroline, this is far bigger than just Adam Silver standing up at a podium and deflecting questions. This is an FBI investigation, which means you're going to hear from everybody that has some skin in the game, some teeth in this investigation. So this could be a long process of just getting out the information that the FBI actually has for us.
I think it absolutely will be a long process. And I don't think that this ends here. From what we've learned about this morning, about Terry Rozier and about Chauncey Billups, that it might not end there. That we heard from the FBI that those are not the only two arrests that have been made in relation to this alleged gambling ring. We don't know if there are more people or players or coaches with NBA ties that have also been arrested or could potentially be arrested or could potentially be involved in this situation. Now, I don't want to, I don't want to throw out conspiracy theories here. I don't want to question things that might not, be actual, tangible evidence. We don't know. We are learning evidence just as quickly as you are learning these things. We are refreshing our Twitter accounts and hearing from reporters just as you are. We are only reporting what we do know, but I think it is fair to at least question how deep this goes within the NBA.
You see everybody there. We're taking you back to the podium. We're not going anywhere. Check this out. This is the FBI telling us right now the latest on this investigation.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Joseph Nocella. I am the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of New York. I'd like to welcome you here today. In addition, we have with us today FBI Director Kash Patel, FBI Assistant Director in Charge Christopher Rea of the New York Field Office, Special Agent in Charge of the New York Field Office Leslie Bakshi's, New York Special Agent in Charge of Homeland Security Ricky Patel, Newark Special Agent in Charge of Homeland Security Michael McCarty, Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch, Chief of Detectives Joseph Kenney, and the Executive Director of the Waterfront Commission, Phoebe Sorrell. I'm now going to turn the podium over to FBI Director Kash Patel.
Good morning. Today we are here in New York to announce a historic arrest across a wide-sweeping criminal enterprise that envelops both the NBA and La Cosa Nostra. The men and women up here standing with me represent a small portion of the leadership team that brought profound justice in an era that needed it more than any. I'll just highlight some of the details in the case and the FBI work, and then you'll hear from the others. But as you now know, individuals such as Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rozier were taken into custody today, former, current NBA players and coaches. What you don't know is that this is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years. The FBI led a coordinated takedown across 11 states to arrest over 30 individuals today responsible for this case, which is very much ongoing. Not only did we crack into the fraud that these perpetrators committed on the grand stage of the NBA, but we also entered and executed a system of justice against La Cosa Nostra to include the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese crime families. And you'll hear more about those details today. The charges and the arrests that were taken down across this country range from wire fraud, money laundering, extortion, robbery, illegal gambling. This FBI will leave no room for any perpetrator of crime across this country. You hear a lot about our work of defending the homeland and crushing violent crime. Well, this work is also representative of a colossal portion of the FBI's mandate to keep America safe and to keep our entertainment industry fair and secure. The men and women that are standing up here today worked tireless hours, days, months, and years. And the fraud is mind-boggling. It's not hundreds of dollars. It's not thousands of dollars. It's not tens of thousands of dollars. It's not even millions of dollars. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars in fraud and theft and robbery across a multi-year investigation. And we could not have done it without our interagency partners that are before us today. The NYPD, HSI, and teams of law enforcement officials from around the country made this day possible. It takes a team to bring this kind of justice, sweeping justice, into the halls of the United States courtrooms, where our brave United States Attorney has led this prosecution. It takes courageous prosecutors to stand before you and say, we will not allow this kind of illicit activity to happen, not only at the national sporting level, but also where it hides in La Cosa Nostra. And when these two collided together, they perpetrated a fraud that is historic in terms of not just money, but the scheme and the deceit that they utilize to steal and swindle people from money, to include crypto fraud. This is an operation that showcases to you that under President Trump's administration, there is no room for any type of criminal behavior, be it on the world's largest stage or in the back rooms of tiny parlors where card games are being played. We are proud to stand here today with the men and women of the FBI and this legal team. And to the United States Attorney, I just want to thank you personally for taking the time to display the work that the media is about to hear about today in detail. As I said, it does take courageous prosecutors, but it takes a courageous United States Attorney to bring this case, because we are going to take heat for it. But we don't shy away in this administration. We don't say no. What we do is we bring the results across the finish line. We bring them to the public. We bring you accountability. And yes, they will have their day in court, and you will hear the evidence through the court system exclusively. We will not deny anyone of due process. And that's the brilliance of this system. That's the brilliance of this administration. Everyone will be held to account. So with that, I turn it over to United States Attorney Nosella. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Patel. To be clear, we're announcing today indictments in two major cases, both involving fraud. One involves sports betting, and the other involves illegal gambling, very specifically rigged poker games. The first indictment involves 6 defendants who are alleged to have participated in one of the most brazen sports corruption schemes since online sports betting became widely legalized in the United States. This scheme is an insider sports betting conspiracy that exploited confidential information about National Basketball Association athletes and teams. The second indictment involves 31 defendants alleged to have participated in a nationwide scheme to rig illegal poker games. These defendants, which include former professional athletes, used high-tech cheating technology to steal millions of dollars from victims in underground poker games that were secretly fixed. The games in the New York area were backed by the Bonanno, Gambino, and Genovese crime families of La Cosa Nostra. While the cases are separate, there are 3 overlapping defendants charged in both cases: Damon Jones, Eric Ernest, and Shane Hennon. The indictments in these cases contain only allegations, and the defendants are presumed innocent until they are proven guilty in a court of law. But my message to the defendants who've been rounded up today is this: your winning streak has ended. Your luck has run out. Violating the law is a losing proposition, and you can bet on that. First, I would like to talk about United States versus Ernest, the NBA basketball gambling case. The defendants in this case are Eric Ernest, Marvez Farley, Shane Hennon, DeNiro Laster, Damon Jones, a former NBA player and coach, and Terry Rozier, a current NBA player. Other co-conspirators were previously charged for their roles in the scheme, including former NBA player Jonte Porter. Between December 2022 and March 2024, these defendants perpetrated a scheme to defraud by betting on inside, non-public information about NBA athletes and teams. The non-public information included when specific players would be sitting out future games, or when they would pull themselves out early for purported injuries or illnesses. They relied on corrupt individuals, including Jones and Rozier. They also misused information obtained through long-standing friendships that they had with NBA players and coaches. And in at least one instance, they got their information by threatening a current player, Porter, because of his pre-existing gambling debts. Defendants used this non-public information to place hundreds of thousands of dollars in fraudulent bets, mostly in the form of prop bets on individual player performance. The bets were placed through online sports books and also in person at casinos. The defendants relied on a network of straw bettors to place the maximum amount of bets to increase their potential profits. Most of these bets succeeded, and the intended losses were in the millions of dollars. The defendants then laundered their illegal winnings in various ways: peer-to-peer platforms, bank wires, and simple cash exchanges. The indictment details specific examples where the defendants profited from illegal gambling and illegal betting on various NBA games about the performance of players on, among other things, the Charlotte Hornets, the Portland Trail Blazers, the Los Angeles Lakers, and the Toronto Rangers. Each defendant in the NBA basketball gambling case has been charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud and conspiracy to commit money laundering. Now, I would like to turn to the other case, United States versus Aiello, the rigged poker game case. Beginning as early as 2019, the defendants in this case orchestrated a scheme to use wireless cheating technology to run rigged poker games across the United States, including in the Hamptons, Las Vegas, Miami, and Manhattan. The scheme targeted victims known as, quote, fish, who were often lured to participate in these rigged games by the chance to play alongside former professional athletes who were known as, quote, face cards. The so-called face cards included the defendant Chauncey Billups, who at the time of the scheme was a former NBA player and is currently the head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers, and also Damon Jones, a former NBA player and coach. What the victims, the fish, didn't know is that everybody else at the poker game, from the dealer to the players, including the face cards, were in on the scam. Once the game was underway, the defendants fleeced the victims out of tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars per game. The defendants used a variety of very sophisticated cheating technologies, some of which were provided by other defendants in exchange for a share of the profits from the scheme. For example, they used off-the-shelf shuffling machines that had been secretly altered in order to read the cards in the deck, predict which player at the table had the best poker hand, and relay that information to an off-site operator. The off-site operator sent the information via cell phone back to a co-conspirator at the table, and that person at the table was known as the quarterback. The quarterback then signaled secretly the information he had received from others to others at the table, and together they used that information in order to win their games and to cheat the victims. Defendants used other cheating technologies such as poker chip tray analyzers, which is a poker chip tray that secretly reads cards using a hidden camera, special contact lenses or eyeglasses that could read pre-marked cards, and an X-ray table that could read cards face down on the table. What you see depicted on the screen right now is an example of the X-ray table that reveals the cards. Although they are face down on the table, they can be read because of the X-ray technology. The Mafia, specifically members and associates of the Bonanno, Gambino, and Genovese organized crime families, had pre-existing control over non-rigged, illegal poker games around New York City. As a result, they also became involved in the rigged poker games, helping to organize the games and taking a cut of the proceedings, and working to enforce the collection of debts. The defendants laundered their proceeds, including through cash exchanges, the use of multiple shell companies, and through cryptocurrency transfers. As part of the scheme, some of the defendants and their co-conspirators also committed acts of violence, including the gunpoint robbery of a person in order to obtain a rigged shuffling machine, and extortions that were perpetrated against victims in order to ensure that they repaid their gambling debts. Defendants who participated in the rigged poker scheme are charged with wire fraud conspiracy. Other defendants have been charged with crimes including illegal gambling, money laundering, Hobbs Act robbery, and extortions. This case demonstrates our office's unrelenting commitment to fighting the scourge of organized crime in whatever form it takes. I'd like to conclude my remarks by thanking the incredible hard work of our law enforcement partners, including the FBI, Homeland Security, the NYPD, and the Waterfront Commission. I also want to thank the dedicated prosecutors who built these two cases and who are standing to my right. Benjamin Weintraub, David Bourbon, Caitlin Farrell, Michael Gibaldi, Irisa Chen, and Sean Sherman. They had the assistance of paralegal specialists Liam McNett, John Schneider, Marlene Bosler. Also deserving of our thanks because of their outstanding investigative work on the NBA case are FBI Special Agents Russell Lantier, Dominic Mariani, Amy Giarosa, Shane Wilkins, and Supervisory Special Agent Luke Hardison. On the rigged poker game scheme, outstanding work was performed by FBI Special Agents Thomas Cribbin, Jeff Boriola, Jonathan Corona, Alexander Silverman, Amy Campanaro, and Supervisory Special Agent Michael Malahi, as well as NYPD Task Officer James McCullough, and from Homeland Security, Supervisory Special Agent Charles Freund, and from the Waterfront Commission, Detective Paul Shimborski. Finally, I want to note that the investigations in both cases are ongoing, and we encourage anyone with information about either scheme to please contact the FBI.
You've been watching the FBI as they continue to tell us what is going on with the investigation, and staggering headlines. Yahoo Sports Daily, Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz, Dan Devine. A lot to break down, Dan, but I just, the staggering moment where they say this is an investigation that spanned multiple years with tens of millions of dollars in fraud, theft, and robbery. That's the quote. That is absolutely stunning. Your initial reaction?
It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that sense that these, what were initially reported as discrete items, as they're laying these things out, seem to be part of a much larger picture, individual pieces of a larger picture that spans multiple years and has its tendrils sort of pretty far reaching. Yeah, I think it's the moment where I believe it was Director Patel said, and they will have their day in court. There will the information we'll find out. It is important to start from that principle as well. Like, what we are getting at this stage is the FBI and the Eastern District of New York's indictments, the information that from law enforcement sources, a lot of the reporting this morning has come from law enforcement officials. And as we, move through this process, we'll hear from presumably Terry Rozier's attorney, from Chauncey Billups, and statements coming from them. So there's a chance, and in all likelihood, a very different version of events that will come down the pike. But I think what we have, the information that we're going off of now, these two separate but related cases and indictments that feature similar players overlapping, including Damon Jones being identified in both cases, paints a picture of something a heck of a lot larger than I think anybody in the NBA would have ever wanted to publicly discuss.
100%. And of course, we heard there that these are all accusations of illegal gambling, sports rigging, and robbery. As more evidence comes out, of course, the legal side of things is one thing. How does the NBA proceed? What comes next for Adam Silver in the NBA?
I think the answer is going to be frustrating, I think, for a lot of people, but it will be, we don't have the same investigative powers at wide reach as the federal government and the FBI. And so we are going to, of course, cooperate in any and all instances of investigations that the federal government is undertaking. And we will let the legal process run its course. That is, I think, has been the general kind of operational playbook for the NBA in almost every interaction with the law enforcement space, with any kind of legal activity. It's saying we have our sort of rules and our bylaws, our constitution, our way that our operations manual, the way things need to work here. But when this gets to a federal or a law enforcement level, we let that play out, and then we help out in whatever way we can, and then move forward after the fact. So I think seeing any major movement from the NBA that's not something to the effect of, we are aware of the investigation and the report and the comments this morning, and we will be, coming, we will have more to say when there's something more to be said. I think that's kind of what you're going to get, because again, as we were talking about earlier, that sense of the NBA is run by lawyers. Adam Silver is a very cautious person by trade, and is going to not want to jump too far out on the ledge before he knows what he's jumping out into. And my guess would be here, my reading of this situation is, we are closer to the start of a lot of information coming out than we are to the end of it.
Okay, so just indulge me for a second, Dan, because
Sure.
I think while these are separate but related, I think most people right now might be breathing a sigh of relief that Chauncey Billups seems to be involved in a massive poker. That's a much different, to be very honest here, hearing that Chauncey is part of a poker illegal game that involves robbery and all of these terrible, terrible things. It's awful. But that's far different to most NBA fans than the concept of fixing games. And it stands out to me that when while these are separate but related, at least it's not a coach. I guess maybe I'm just finding poly positive here, but I would feel more disturbed today if we heard that Chauncey Billups was also part of whatever this, as they called it, the most brazen sports corruption scheme in modern history. That's not what Chauncey's in. He's in a poker game. So, how do we justify that in our minds?
I would agree with you that what this felt like as the presentation was being unfolded there, it felt a little bit more like we got 2 + 2 = purple. The sense of these are things that are related by there are individuals involved in the NBA in both of these pots, and the specifics of what was being gambled on, what was the nature of the ring or the operation, et cetera, differed very wildly, and the scope of them, it sounds like, differed wildly. I no disrespect to the notion of people getting bilked out of money in private poker games. That to me does seem very different than willful and intentional manipulation of public sporting events. And I think that's why those are two separate indictments and two separate cases. Obviously, yeah, the nightmare scenario when you first saw the tweets go over the timeline this morning of Chauncey Billups has also been arrested is this Pete Rose, right? The fear was, is this a sitting coach, an active coach, actively betting on games that he was coaching in? The subsequent reporting suggested that is not the case. That is a separate thing. The FBI now and the Eastern District confirming that. I do think that there's to the extent that you can breathe a sigh of relief in a situation like this, where we're continuing to get more information by the minute and more reporting will certainly unveil more. I think that's right. If what we continue to see here is Chauncey Billups is involved in something that has nothing to do with his on-court responsibilities as a coach, That I think would probably be a net win for the NBA in this context. I think the concern there, if you're talking about the court of public opinion and what a skeptical fan might look at and say, if you are involved with the mob in one capacity, is there a potential to make a short walk to a different kind of compromised? But based on the information we have so far, we don't know that. And so again, this is the official version of events as we're hearing it. There will be more information that will come out, and we haven't had the opportunity to hear from Chauncey Billups or from his representatives, and more will be revealed.
Okay, I just want to clarify here because I feel like I am, and probably so many of our viewers are drinking legal jargon and news from a fire hose at this point. So
Sure.
the relationship between these two alleged illegal activities, one, the sports betting, and two, the rigged poker games that Chauncey Billups is allegedly involved with. The only thing that ties these two things together is the involvement of NBA figures.
To be honest, I mean, I have not read the indictments to this
From what
point,
we
so
know.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly. The way it was presented in that stand-up certainly was that these are two separate issues, both related to fraud and relating to NBA personnel. Whether the specific, the gamblers or the game fixers, the poker game riggers, if there's overlap there, I'm not positive about that. The names on the indictments were not the same. And so I think in the initial round of reporting, Damon Jones's name has popped up in both of them, one in the Terry Rozier story and then also in the poker game story with Chauncey Billups. So it is possible that they are related through him. But as far as I am aware, again, not having read the full indictments on both cases, it is basically like we have folks from the NBA involved in both of these, and they are both related to gambling and fraud. So let's run these together. But again, more will be revealed, I would imagine.
That's where this is very difficult because the headlines, we still have two separate cases. And now I don't want to make light of either of these cases. To be very clear, you're talking about 31 defendants, according to the notes I took while I was speaking, that were part of the illegal poker schemes. That's involving three massive crime families there. That is nothing that we are on this show in any way, shape, or form downplaying. That is far different for the NBA, though, than the other portion of this, which is 6 defendants in what they called, this is the quote that I wrote down, one of the most brazen sports corruption schemes, end quote, that we've seen. Now, from 22 to 24, according to what they told us, the scheme was to defraud bettors on inside information from athletes and teams based on when players are sitting out, when they would pull out for injuries or illnesses. They used friendships. They laundered money. They placed small bets all over the place. If that turns out to be the case, that's the accusation right now. How damning is that for the NBA?
It's a significant problem. I mean, this is also, and again, we talked earlier about the yes, there are guardrails, there are prohibitions in player contracts in the collective bargaining agreement, in the NBA's operations manual about what league personnel are allowed to gamble on, what they're not allowed to gamble on. And obviously this would be beyond the pale and outside the lines on all of those things. When you open up markets to, same game, betting and on individual player prop bets on individual statistical things, those present opportunities for manipulation that I think the NBA has since in the wake of Jonte Porter and Malik Beasley and Terry Rozier and some of these other things that have come up, has talked about perhaps needing to take a closer look at what you are able to gamble on under on, or the individual player props. So that I think is certainly part of this that would need to be viewed with greater scrutiny. As far as but I think the larger point, and Caroline, I know you brought this up earlier, that sense of, if you are a fan, if you are a consumer, if you're somebody looking at this and saying, like, the important thing here is I need to be able to believe that what I'm seeing is on the level. I need, the integrity of what I'm watching. The whole point of tuning into the athletic competition is to see something that you don't believe is predetermined or has been a thumb put on the scale in any way. If you lose that perception, trust is awfully hard to gain and very easy to lose. If you lose that that ability to trade on that integrity, you've lost something pretty fundamental to the inherent value proposition of the sport. And that seems like an awfully big thing to put at risk for the pot of money that the NBA has been welcoming in here.
It's hard to say that we have precedent for this, just given that everything that we just heard in that FBI press conference is that this is unprecedented. So I'll ask you to speculate a little bit because I think that's all that we have at this point is speculation of
Sure.
what this means on the NBA side of things. If all of these things come out to be true, that players are rigging games, is this something that could call for a replacement of Adam Silver as the commissioner of the NBA?
I would imagine that that comes from the ownership, right? I mean, the NBA is fundamentally a group of 30 individual partners that collectively make this league, and Adam Silver is the governor that works for them. So, in the same way that Roger Goodell represents the interests of the owners of the NFL, and so on in every other sport. So, for a commissioner to reach that point of needing to be replaced, that would be something that the owners would have to come to some kind of quorum on that and say, this is the person who is going to fall on the sword for this situation. I think we're a very long way away from that. My guess would be that the first steps in this process would be, using Jontay Porter as the most relevant recent precedent. If the finding of fact here bears out that, yes, Terry Rozier was involved in intentionally manipulating these sort of betting markets by pulling himself out of games early, by sharing this inside information, so on and so forth, Jontay Porter was banned for life. And so that to me would be the next step there. If the finding of fact points in that direction. Any other involved individual, whether that's an assistant coach, other team personnel, if the finding of fact supports it, that would seem to be the relevant precedent here. Banned from being able to be involved in the NBA for up to a lifetime ban. And so I think that's our first. These are our first steps there. But to your broader point, like if this reaches a point where there is a sense that there is a lack of overall institutional control, and what the public facing image of what the league has taken irreparable damage under your leadership, that certainly, it's not outside the realm of possibility that the league's owners say we need to drastically change the narrative here, and that would be one way to do it. I also imagine that a lot of those owners are looking at the $76 billion media rights deal they just signed under Adam Silver's auspices, and the various ways in which the overall pie of NBA basketball-related revenue and income has grown under his leadership, and might be a little bit reticent to move that way. But early days on all of this, and I think at a certain point, if we wind up with not just indictments but convictions, some heads are going to roll somewhere.
Dan, we really appreciate your insight, especially on the fly. This has been a wild morning. Couldn't have done it without you. Check out the big number. Dan Devine, really appreciate you answering the bat phone again for us this morning. We appreciate you, my friend.
Thanks so much.
Thanks,
All right,
Dan.
great stuff from Dan. We're going to keep breaking it down. As expected, we have heard from Terry Rozier's attorney. We're going to take a quick break, and then we will get you caught up on the other side of this controversy coming up. Yahoo Sports Daily. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. U.S. Attorney has spoken on illegal gambling operations involving the Heat point guard Terry Rozier, Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups, and more. We covered much of that press conference right here on Yahoo Sports Daily. We can continue to break down the massive story that is absolutely taking over everybody's minds this morning as we find out about a wild investigation involving two separate but related somehow set of indictments that came down. One involving Chauncey Billups, which sounds like it was part of a massive poker ring involving mafia families and defrauding people out of tens of millions of dollars. Also, from the other side of that, obviously involving Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier was arrested this morning as part of what looks like a conspiracy involving 6 players, and charges are coming down with that involving fixing of games. It looks like fixing of betting opportunities around player props. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. Caroline, I think it's important because we've talked a lot about the FBI's mindset on this.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about the indictments. We've heard one side of the story. We always want to point that out on this show. Terry Rozier's lawyer has given a statement to Pablo Torre. Pablo Torre finds out, has tweeted this out. I will read the statement in its entirety to get your reaction. This is the quote. We have represented Terry Rozier for over a year. A long time ago, we reached out to these prosecutors to tell them we should have an open line of communication. They characterized Terry as a subject, not a target. But at 6 a.m. this morning, they called to tell me FBI agents were trying to arrest him in a hotel. It is unfortunate that instead of allowing him to self-surrender, they opted for a photo op. They wanted the misplaced glory of embarrassing a professional athlete with a perp walk. That tells you a lot about the motivation in this case. They appear to be taking the word of spectacularly incredible sources, rather than relying on actual evidence of wrongdoing. Terry was cleared by the NBA, and these prosecutors revived that non-case. Terry is not a gambler, but he is not afraid of a fight, and he looks forward to winning this fight. That is the statement from Terry Rozier's attorney in reaction to the indictments, Caroline.
My initial reaction is that is what a lawyer is supposed to say, right? His attorney, Jim Trusty, which, not to make light of it, but is a pretty funny name for an attorney.
Wow.
That is what you do to defend your client. He is hired and he has a job to do to defend Terry Rozier to the absolute best of his ability. So it doesn't surprise me in the slightest that that is what his attorney would say. That is his job, is to defend his client. Now, in his statement, he says that Terry was cleared by the NBA. Important to point out, as we have done several times in this discussion regarding this case, the NBA is not the court of law. The NBA's burden of proof is much lower than it is of the FBI, that we cannot use what the NBA has found, and we cannot use the NBA's investigations as the standard for what the FBI standard is in a court of law. So just to say that he was cleared by the NBA is not sufficient for the FBI or for a court of law. Also, another thing that he says is they appear to be taking the word of spectacularly credible, not incredible, incredible sources rather than relying on actual evidence of wrongdoing. I have to think that the sources used by the FBI are credible, that the sources being cited by the FBI and all that have been investigating this case are using credible sources. And if the FBI is not using credible sources, well, then we have a much larger issue on our hands. So I'm not saying that Terry Rozier absolutely, positively is guilty of what he is doing simply based off of a press conference by the NBA and FBI. That would be irresponsible of me. But all I am saying is it's fair to poke holes in the argument of a lawyer and of an attorney whose job it is to support that man right there to the absolute best of his ability.
I will add one other statement he made in his statement about Terry Rozier. Said Terry's not a gambler. Okay. This is the one thing I'd say to that. You don't have to be part of the indictment that we saw, because what they said is 6 defendants in one of the most brazen sports corruption schemes, that's their words, that we've seen. And they talked about an insider sports betting conspiracy using confidential information about athletes and teams. Now, they turned around and they gave that information to bettors all over the country to turn around and let those bettors place bets. You don't have to be a bettor to be a resource of information. It has nothing to do with whether or not you actually bet. It has everything to do with, as this allegation seems to be laying out, whether it's telling people that certain players are injured or whether it's telling people that you're not playing that night, whatever it might be. And we don't know until we actually get to the trial portion of this. But I do think it's important to point out that attorneys don't say things in statements accidentally. So he's cementing the groundwork at this point of, hey, he's not a bettor. Okay, well, nowhere in this indictment that we've seen so far, it's very early, does it say that you have to be a bettor to be part of it. This indictment isn't just about the betting. It's about the information that was shared. So without even being somebody that necessarily bets, you can profit off of sharing information. So it's just a reminder that everything's calculated at this point, and it's going to be he said, or he said, she said, until we actually get further into the process.
And also important to point out, my knowledge of the NBA CBA is that NBA players can bet. Like, it's not just gambling that's an issue. If an NBA player would like to place a bet on an NFL game, would like to place a bet on the Olympics, like whatever it might be, it is my understanding that NBA players are allowed to do that, can sports bet. The one thing that they cannot do, however, is gamble on NBA games. That is my understanding. So even if, Terry Rozier is a quote unquote gambler, that's allowed. That's okay. You just cannot gamble on the NBA. But it's very, well pointed out by you that it's not just about placing bets. It's not just about a financial transaction between Terry Rozier's, sports gambling account on himself or on his own team or on the NBA as a whole. It's also the information that he provides. That's an important thing to point out, that even if players themselves aren't actually fixing or rigging games, information that players and coaches can provide, which is what he is accused of doing, is just as damning and just as illegal as actually fixing and rigging a game himself. Providing injury information, illness information, important and sensitive information that is only known behind closed doors within an NBA locker room is just as valuable and just as illegal as actually rigging the games themselves.
The easy thing for everybody to do right now is to jump on a massive overreaction. The hard thing to do is to let the process play itself out. And I think where even for us in our media analysis, because to be honest and transparent with everybody watching, 3 minutes before this show started, we didn't know that we were going to spend 2 hours on this topic, right? So it's just coming at you. It's flying at you live, right? Yeah. But I think part of what we have to remember right now is, as you've mentioned, the burden of proof is different. When you start talking about an NBA investigation versus a criminal investigation, they're two wildly different things. But also what the government can ask you versus what the NBA can ask you. Like when you start talking about an NBA investigation, they can ask you have information, doesn't mean you will. Like anybody that's a true crime junkie, or hell, if you just watch Law and Order, you're used to sort of the differences between, okay, criminal investigations versus civil investigations have different lines of proof. And Adam Silver can go up to a player and say, you have to tell me this. And they can say, no, I don't really want to. Like cooperation in an investigation is all in the eyes of a beholder, depending on what the ask actually looks like. Once you start getting into an FBI investigation that, frankly, has spanned years, as they made it clear, it has spanned years. Well, as they go through their process, the way they investigate things is completely different. Even the process of investigation for the FBI is going to be different than the process of investigation for the NBA. So when Rozier's attorney comes out and says, this is a non-starter, the NBA already decided that. Well, of course, but their entire process of digging into it looks different. So what they need to prove looks different. So right now, not only do we have this weird situation where we're going to get two different sides of the story, three when we include the NBA, we could end up with three different sides to one story. Part of what we have to acknowledge is that each of the storytellers in this is going through a wildly different process to get their information. So it's just going to be, man, it's going to get worse before it gets better when it comes to confusion. And I don't know how to stop the court of public opinion from simply ruling on this until we all get enough information to really rule on it.
Well, welcome to the court of public opinion. Yeah, those kinds of things happens. You don't necessarily have to be guilty in a court of law to be guilty in the court of public opinion. But to that point, though, that there are two different entities here, the FBI and the NBA. How different should those investigations look? Of course, the onus is not on the NBA to investigate, criminal wrongdoing. That happens by legal processes. But if all of these are true, if these things are true, the accusations are true, that this has been going on for years, that it has been tens of millions of dollars of illegal gambling and sports rigging, why is the process so wildly different for the FBI versus the NBA? If there is wrongdoing, that there are rules that are being broken by the NBA standards, whether it's the code of conduct in the NBA or whatever rules that exist in the NBA that say you cannot bet on yourself, you cannot bet on the NBA. If the FBI is finding these things, then why can't the NBA find these things if they have, in fact, gone on since 2022, allegedly, which has been reported by the FBI in those press conferences? Doesn't that show just kind of a wild responsibility that has been rescinded by the NBA?
Caroline, I'm going to give you a not very, I'm going to give you an icky answer to this, and it's just an icky real world answer. If our bosses, shout out to our bosses who we hope are watching this morning, ask me a question I don't want to get pinned in on, if they come in and say, did you do this? I'm like, nah, didn't do it. Nope. All right, well, we'd like some proof. I'm not really going to show you that. I'll show you this, but I'm not going to show you that. Like, I think there's just a different answer. Once you get the FBI involved, and in full disclosure, as I've said many times on public record, and I think is always important, my brother served substantial time in prison for possession with the intent to distribute. So I am fully aware of how the legal system works. It impacted my family. I just think that there's a much different answer. Like when your boss comes in and says, hey, I don't think you were clocking in on time. And you're like, no, definitely was. Well, when the cops come in and say, I don't think you were clocking in on time. No, I definitely was. Well, we've subpoenaed this evidence. And it's like, well, I mean, what's on time, right? Like, I mean, let's define what on time is. I can honestly see, especially because you're talking about the NBA investigating a player that has an agent and a rep and a lawyer and all these different people. It's easy for them to turn around and say, we'll give you what we want to give you. We'll give you what you think we have to give you. There's just a far different scope when it's the FBI coming in and saying, by the way, we've subpoenaed the following things. We've been following people. We have photos. We have video evidence. Like it just hits at a different level. The NBA's no sports league is ever going to investigate with the same level of thoroughness that the police will.
100%. Yes. However, that's where this question of integrity and a lack of trust comes from. That if the NBA is going to take your word for it, that, hey, did you gamble? No? Okay, cool. Of course, that's not how it went down, but that's my interpretation of it.
I like that.
Then that's where the lack of trust comes from. That the that the NBA is not holding the league to a certain standard. And I think that we all expect and would hope that leagues hold themselves, their players, their coaches, their organizations, their owners to a certain sense and a certain standard of accountability. And that's where all of these questions and a lack of trust really stem from and really come from. I do not blame sports fans that now have a new sense of distrust in the NBA today that they may have had yesterday.
Look, we usually end this show at 11 o'clock every single day, Monday through Friday. Today, this news is big enough. We're going to give you some bonus time. We're going to go overtime with Yahoo Sports Daily. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll keep breaking it down, and we're going to get Dan Wolken to come on and help us break down even more information on what this massive controversy means for the association. We'll do that after a quick break. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Usually we're off the air right now. If you're just tuning in, we're usually with you Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. Eastern to 11 a.m. Eastern here on YouTube or on Fast Networks, wherever you get your Yahoo Sports. You can hang out with us, yahoosports.tv. But today, huge news in the NBA has us giving you a little extra time. We want to give you the best coverage we possibly can on a massive breaking story. As we came to air this morning, we found out that two people that are fairly household names within the league, Portland Trailblazers head coach Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier of the Miami Heat, both arrested as part of separate but related gambling indictments from the FBI. Now, we covered the FBI statement directly. We sent you live to the podium. We got you a lot of that information. We now know that Chauncey Billups was arrested as part of a poker game that looks like it was defrauding people out of tens of millions of dollars that was related to the mafia. In a very separate indictment involving some similar names, Terry Rozier was arrested as part of a scheme to defraud bettors involving NBA players using inside information and impacting player props. So, Caroline, I think it's important, again, to just reiterate. We're going to be joined by Dan Wolken, going to join us in about 10 minutes. We'll get Dan's thoughts on everything. But I want to reiterate, these are two very different charges. Now, as of today, it's super easy to look at it and say, well, if Chauncey's playing poker with the mafia, he's definitely doing NBA things with the mafia. To that, I would say, if the FBI has worked for years, as they pointed out, to uncover a massive indictment that impacts mafia families all over the country, that impacts the NBA, they're going to make this huge statement. If they had any concrete evidence today that Chauncey was also tied into fixing games in any way, shape, or form, I would at least think that would have been mentioned. Like, there wasn't a timetable that we're aware of, at least as of right now, on the indictments coming down. So I realize everybody wants to take the Chauncey thing and say, if this, then that. My only pushback to that is, if this, then that, the FBI would have probably waited to include that or would give us some indication of that at this point. So I'm not as willing as some to just look at it and say, well, if he's playing cards with the mafia, he must be fixing games with them also.
It is unsettling, though, to think about a head coach in the NBA being involved with illegal activity with the mob. So yes, while those two might be separate, from what we know right now, from everything that we have heard, again, there is going to be more evidence and there's going to be more conversations that are going to be had where we learn more exactly of what happened behind the scenes of these alleged cases. But from right now, what we do know, and my understanding is these are separate but equal. That these are two separate cases, one sports betting, and that is what Terry Rozier has been arrested for and charges of, and two, the rigged poker games, and that's what Chauncey Billups has been involved with, the rigged poker games with the mob, where there has been allegedly been tens of millions of dollars worth of robbery and illegal gambling going on. They cited high-tech technology with glasses and x-ray machines and cameras that could see cards. I mean, wild stuff going on behind the scenes here, but those are two separate entities from what we know of right now. My question is, from right now, the thread that connects these two is the fact that it involves NBA personnel, that Terry Rozier is involved with sports betting, that Chauncey Billups is involved in rigged poker games. My question is, will we learn more that connects these two cases beyond just the fact that they involve NBA personnel? They might not at all. These could be two completely different situations and that we view them completely differently in the court of law. But that is a question that I do have, Fitz, is, are there more threads connecting these two? And are these two cases maybe more similar than what we might know of right now? That we don't know. It is truly just speculation at this point on my behalf.
No, I think that's it's all fair questions to ask, and until we have the chance, in fairness, guys, we're always going to be real with you on this show. We've been on air since all of this broke. We haven't, neither of us has had the time to try and dig through the indictments while we're also talking about it on air. So I won't pretend that we've had the opportunity to read the indictments. I think if you just put yourself in the what makes the biggest headline involving a coach and players, all of these things together, it just made this a huge moment, right? Like, it becomes, if you just have the Chauncey story, you just have the Rozier story, you have a big headline. If you have the two of them together, you have a massive headline. So I understand sort of combining the two into one huge day for the FBI. It's a big win in the process of the conversation that we're going to have in the headlines garnered by it. But I don't know necessarily that I see the easy relation between the two, other than they both involve NBA players, right? Like, I think when you see the police commissioner say as the NBA season tips off, his career is already benched, not for injury, but for integrity. Like, there are definitely headline grab moments. Some of the quotes, even from the initial press conference, were very basketball heavy. I don't think it's an accident that they wanted to make sure that this all broke as the season's opening. Everybody's paying attention to it. Like, it makes great headlines by doing it exactly the way they wanted to do it.
To be honest with you, that's a little bit too much for my liking. Like hey, your winning streak has ended. You can bet on that. Like, all right, we get it. Okay, Dr.
I like a good
Seuss,
pun.
Let's
I like a good pun.
I mean, do your job, okay? Report the evidence. Give us information that we don't already know. We don't need you to be coming up with sports puns, but I do appreciate a good pun.
Let me ask
more
you,
than anybody
let me ask
else.
you this though, Caroline. Is this the trust? No matter what happens, like no matter what happens from here, how these indictments play out. Let's say that we never get another piece of information. This never even gets to a court where we see anything, right?
Yep.
But we react so much to the initial news. Is trust already now dead forever in the NBA? Because I think there's a lot of people that will simply take this headline, no matter what happens moving forward, no matter even if they're proven innocent. They're going to look at it and say, nope. If they're proven innocent, everybody's going to turn around and say the league, bought people off, just want to make sure. Like, conspiracy theorists are going to find a way around it. This becomes enough of if you believe the NBA is rigged in any way, shape, or form, this to me becomes the plant the flag moment for the next 30 years that everybody that wants to make that argument makes, no matter what happens moving forward. So you could make the argument that trust is already dead. It's already lost simply because of the headlines that came today.
I think that trust is already dead for a group of people. That there is a group of people and a group of sports fans that already do believe inherently that leagues are rigged, that they're doing it for money, that there's so much money invested into sports leagues that sports leagues have to protect, the money that's coming in, that the sports leagues have to protect their investments, or rather they have to protect those that invest into them. I do not believe in that, but I do feel as though there has been enough that has come out with the NBA, whether it's been the aspiration case with Kawhi Leonard and the alleged cap circumvention from Steve Ballmer, the owner of the Clippers, or whether it was referees fixing games and rigging games, allegedly fixing and rigging games, or the latest that we've now heard about Chauncey Billups or about Terry Rozier, that this only adds fuel to the fire and only adds evidence into those that do believe that. And I do believe that even if all are proven innocent in this, which, let's be honest, let's point out, they are not guilty nor innocent. They have not gone through their due process. They deserve to go through their due process. Even if all are found innocent in this situation, it will still leave a stain on the NBA in the eyes of many. It will still be, I think, the court of public opinion will still, their perception of the NBA will still be tainted, because there is still that growing feeling or that sentiment that has existed of this is not totally and completely authentic.
So let's continue to break this down with one of our favorites, friend of the show and great reporter, Dan Wolken, joining us now. Dan, your initial reaction when all of this came down this morning was?
Well, obviously a surprise with the Chauncey Billups angle. The Terry Rozier part of it, that's kind of been simmering out there a while. But obviously when an NBA head coach gets arrested, it sort of brought me back to 2017 when the FBI was looking into college basketball corruption. And obviously we could talk about that and where that didn't go. It really didn't have much of an impact at all on how college basketball was operating. But I do think, to me, there's two separate stories here. There's obviously the legal ramifications involving the individuals, and that's interesting and how strong these cases are. Ultimately, the mafia angle, right? That's fascinating, and it's going to provide us a lot of fodder. I think there is a larger story here, though, that we need to get our arms around, which is, are we at a tipping point here in terms of the coziness between leagues and sports betting? People have been warning about that for a long time. And I feel like we may be now brushing up against a point where there is going to be a bit of a backlash. There is going to be a push to maybe have more legal protections, more standards, things to maybe at least try to argue against the sort of free reign of gambling that we've seen for the past decade.
But what is there to do? I think is my question, Dan. We've seen players get the death penalty. We've seen players get banned from the league for life for being involved in sports gambling and in rigging games. What more can the NBA do? At what point is the onus not just totally and completely on the players for following the league rules?
Well, for sure. And look, we've always had gambling scandals in sports going back 100 years, right? This is not anything new, and we've seen game fixing, and we've seen Tim Donaghy. I mean, you can just go down the line at all the different scandals that have popped up in pro sports and college sports, sort of, back UNLV and Richard the Fixer and stuff like that, okay? But I do think there is a more cultural component to this, which is that we have taken all of the shackles off the gambling industry. We've made it so pervasive in society. It's obviously causing issues individually for people in terms of their financial situation and getting in trouble, especially young men. I mean, there's all kinds of literature and scientific study on this and the potential negative consequences. And I do think you're just sort of amplifying that into the arena of pro sports, where there is, I think, just a lot more tolerance of gambling in general, right? And how does that impact the way players and coaches who are in the leagues view their own activities? And yeah, the onus is on them. It's personal responsibility and 100%. But I do think you have to sort of question whether there is enough deterrence on the front end of this. Obviously, there's going to be a huge wake-up call effect when you see Chauncey Billups get arrested, okay? But I just think we need to start thinking about gambling and its impact in society more broadly, not just involving a small number of athletes.
Dan, that's sort of the deep, I saw the meme a few weeks ago where it's like I went from, ripping a bong in the back of the parking lot at Taco Bell, hoping to God that a cop wouldn't find me, to hitting my pen in the middle of Target. Like the society has changed a lot on some of these things. It is. I felt that to my core, because I feel like half the time I'm walking through a grocery store, I'm like, wow, I used to get arrested for that smell, and now it's just in the middle of Stop and Shop. Like there is this sort of pervasive thing that has changed in culture. And you're right. Like, you've got kids now, and before they're ever NBA play, before they're college athletes, you've got kids out there that are, the day they turn 18, they're like, yep, boom, I'm 18. I'm going to start gambling. Some figure it out earlier than that, right? And they got the app on their phone and they're rolling. By the time they get to the point where they're blocked on it, they're already used to doing it. And I don't know how you fix that. Like you, this is your tweet. We were talking about this. The NCAA voluntarily loosened the rules to allow college athletes to bet on pro sports yesterday. But then when that college athlete becomes a pro athlete, they're not going to be able to bet on pro sports. They'll be betting on college. Like, how do we do this? Like, when the shackles are being sort of loosened at the college level, that's not going to make it easier on the NBA in 5 years.
No, because you're asking people to live up to standards with very sort of fine lines, right? And I don't know how you expect people, just take your standard college quarterback, okay, who's got some money because of NIL, right? And now they've got access to a account on one of these gambling sites. And okay, they can go bet their parlay on Sunday, but it's honestly not that much of a leap for them to say, okay, yeah, but what about a college game? Like, maybe to all of us, that line should be very clear, but to someone who's 18 and they don't really understand about maybe the detection, how sophisticated that part of it is, maybe they just don't know, right? They're not going to pay attention in the briefings and the meetings. We were 18. Were we paying attention when people were lecturing us about do this, don't do that? I mean, come on, right? So I don't really understand what the NCAA is doing, other than they don't want to use their investigative resources, which are limited in the first place, on trying to find out whether somebody's starting quarterback made a otherwise legal bet on an NFL game. Okay, I get that, And so their stance is abstinence only doesn't work. But at the same time, you're just causing all of these lines to be blurred, I think. And I believe you're opening yourself up to more problems than you're solving by, at least from the NCAA standpoint, making that legal.
I do have to push back a little bit because I think about how many universities have partnerships with beer companies. You can now sell beer and alcohol in college stadiums. We don't say, well, when a player turns 21, that temptation of, his team or his university having advertisements for Bud Light in the stadium. I think we view gambling so differently because it is so new. Because it's only been what, 7 years, less than a decade since sports gambling has been legalized. And I'm with you that it is wrong to break the rules. And I think that we are opening ourselves up to a very scary type of society where sports gambling is so easy and we can just open up our phones and do it with the tap of a button. But to say that, 18-year-olds never listen to rules. Well, you get paid like an adult now. So now you need to follow the rules like an adult. To what point are we just clutching our pearls a little bit with sports gambling? And to what point do we just need people to follow the rules?
I hear you. And I am certainly sympathetic to that point of view. But I think when you're talking about integrity of the game, right? Because that's what ultimately this is about, is integrity of the game. You have to be extra vigilant on that. And that's why I don't necessarily buy the comparison to drinking and alcohol ads. I mean, that's a personal problem that you don't want people to become alcoholics, okay? But this is integrity of the game. Now, you could probably eliminate a lot of this stuff by just getting rid of prop bets. Prop bets are, I think, the root of a lot of the issues when it comes to integrity of the game because they're so easy to manipulate. And obviously we saw that with Jonte Porter, and we've seen that with some of the cases that are coming up in college sports where, this a sort of random, seventh best player on a Mountain West team gets popped because they were betting the under on their own prop bets. Like, why do we even make that available? Okay. But that to me is where you do have to really take into consideration the money element of it, right? Because people get in debt gambling. That makes them vulnerable to actions that would directly impact the integrity of the game. And so when that happens over and over again, like, you just have to take a step back and maybe just put a hard stop here and say, we need to rethink this whole thing.
Yeah,
I think to that end,
I'm with you there.
let me speak as the old man on the block here too. Like the drinking age was changed to 21. I think it was the early 80s, 82, 84. When I was a kid, that there was the same way we talk about gambling now is how we talked about alcohol. Oh my God, you can't have alcohol near college campuses. That's like kids can't control themselves. Like to your point, Caroline, I think because it is so new and because it is something everybody's adjusting to having this level of availability, like, look, at the end of the day, like, you're right, alcohol for a whole generation now, it's like, yeah, so what? There's beer on and around campus, not a big deal. In the 80s, oh my God. And that's when the same concept again around like marijuana and the way that we're viewing it now versus the way that it was viewed in the 80s and 90s. Like, I think you just culturally, you have to have it around enough that it at least normalizes to the point that it's not seen as this great new wild temptation, So I do think that part of the reason this comes into play is because we've just normalized the fact that alcohol is everywhere. But I don't want to gloss over the fact that, in the 80s, the concept of cigarettes being advertised to children, because, man, kids can't stop. They can't resist these ads. They're pointed towards kids. And then it was alcohol sponsors on football games. How could they ever do that around kids? Like, those were real conversations when I was in high school in the 90s about society. Like, when we decided that music was the reason that kids were suddenly going out and doing terrible things. It's like, we do this. It just happens to be gambling, and gambling is so new right now. I just think that's part of the reason, at least to throw that context in the conversation, Caroline.
Yeah, it's all fair and good context that when things are new, I think that you open up Pandora's box and sometimes things just kind of settle out and the average, the mean averages out itself. But then I do want to get your perspective on the NCAA side of things because you do such a wonderful job covering college sports for Yahoo Sports. It was just announced yesterday that the NCAA will now allow college athletes to bet on sports outside of college sports, which is the timing on there is truly could not have been worse. And we talked about this with the NBA, that if all of these things come out and, Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups are found guilty in a court of law, that looks poorly on Adam Silver. And Adam Silver may be the one to have to answer for that. Adam Silver may be replaced as commissioner of the NBA. Let's just say things go crazy and wild in college sports, that we find all of these college athletes rigging games or betting on their own team, betting on college sports. Who in the NCAA or who in college sports is to answer to that as Adam Silver answers to the NBA?
It's definitely harder to assign blame because, just as an example, with this particular rule that they approved yesterday that opens up betting on pro sports for college athletes and staff members, it had to be approved by all three divisions. So first Division I approved it, and then it went down the line. And so you had to get the approval of the entire NCAA, and they did that. Now, I think they have been influenced by a propaganda campaign that has said, all right, abstinence only doesn't work, and we can't use these investigative resources on this stuff. But the NCAA is playing from behind here from the jump street, okay? Because they have been relying in some cases on the federal investigations of some college athletes who have been involved in this type of activity, and then they come in behind and levy these bans, these punishments. I just think they want to take it off their plate. That's really what I think the NCAA wants. They don't want the blame. They don't want any. They don't want anything to do with it. They want the feds to handle it, and they want to spend their time chasing down, improper benefits and all the old traditional stuff. This is just too big for them. So who's to blame for that? I don't know. It's obviously influenced in some degree by Charlie Baker, the NCAA president. But at the same time, I don't know what he has influence over anymore anyway. I mean, he's fairly irrelevant when it comes to managing college sports, as is the NCAA at this point. They are more worried about NIL and all this other stuff. But this is a big problem on their hands. And that's why I think their big focus is just get rid of the prop bets, and they think this will take care of itself. I think maybe they're right on that to some degree, but at the same time, I'm not sure how they can actually get that done because, they're going to need Congress or some type of regulatory body to come in and do that for them.
Dan, let's say everybody's found guilty in this whole process, and it's worst case scenario for everything that we found out today. In a year, does it change anything about the way that the NBA is actually doing business?
Well, I think a cynic would say you look at how much money that the NBA is taking in from their various gambling partners, and maybe you would say no, right? I mean, because they're relying on that revenue. They're very much in bed with the gambling industry, and I don't know if they can control it at this point.
The toothpaste is out of the tube. It feels like.
Yeah.
What is there to do?
Well, couldn't they? The one thing I would ask, couldn't every league essentially, if you really want to make sure that your players still have the ability to bet if they want to bet because that's their right or whatever, however you want to term that. Couldn't every league essentially form their own betting app? And if you are an NBA player, the minute you sign into the NBA Players Association, this is now the only app you can ever use for any bet you ever place in your entire life. You place any bet outside of this app and you're fried. And then they could track everything, they could monitor everything. You'd still have people break the rules. I get it. But it'd be a hell of a lot easier to track it.
But who governs
Jason, maybe
that?
they should hire you. They should hire you to run this thing.
Come on, let me run it. I'd take Adam Silver's job in a heartbeat. I'd fall on the sword for the owners all the time, and then just say nothing every time I'm at the podium. It'd be a perfect fit. Yeah, look, it's still going to be bad apples. Like that's the hard part about this is that there are rules in place, and people aren't following the rules. I don't know how you fix that. What I do know, Dan, is that we appreciate you joining us. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your insight, as always. Thanks for helping get us smarter on all of this. And we appreciate, especially short notice, we appreciate you turning around and making us all understand this a little better.
Thank you, Dan.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks.
Caroline, I think the question I just asked there is the hardest part about this. Like, at this point, I'll be a cynic for a second. Egg's already on the face of the league. People are already going to make their decisions no matter what happens moving forward. and nothing's going to change. So that's the cynic in me says rule breakers are still going to break the rules. People that believe that the whole thing is rigged are still going to believe it's rigged. Nobody's going to trust the result one way or the other. So all of this is wild and it's shocking and it hurts my heart as a sports fan. But I don't know that any of it actually changes anything in the reality of what we'll face moving forward if you love the NBA.
It's wild. It really is. It's wild and it feels icky. But I think at the end of the day, the thing that gives me optimism and hope as a sports fan and somebody that believes in the integrity of professional sports and college sports is the fact that we are talking about this right now. Because somebody found this, because this was dug up, because the FBI looked at this and said, this is fishy and this is wrong. We've seen this several times with the NFL. Several players in the past have gotten suspended from the NFL for breaking the league's gambling rules. Calvin Ridley, I think, is the perfect example of that. We've seen it in the NHL. We've seen players go under investigation for gambling on NHL games. And the reason that we know about these things is because the league and these sports books are uncovering these things and bringing them to light. If we saw a zero story whatsoever about any player ever in the history breaking a gambling rule, well, wouldn't that feel a little bit fishy? Surely someone out there is a bad egg, is a bad apple that's been breaking the rules. That is what gives me hope, is that there are guardrails in place, that there's a jurisdiction and people out there that are saying this is wrong and we are breaking these rules and we want to uphold the integrity of these professional sports leagues.
At the end of the day, people are getting caught, and I will never understand why people that have made the money they've made playing in the NBA would risk all of that for a few $1,000 on a bet here or there. What I know is we've given you an extra 30 minutes of Yahoo Sports Daily, which we could not have done today without Dan Devine and without Dan Wolken. Without the two of them, we could not have gotten you this great coverage. And, of course, Mike Goldfarb, Doug Branson, Josh Golden, the entire team behind the scenes worked their tails off to make this happen. We hope you loved it. Come back, hang out with us tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. For Caroline Fenton, I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks for watching the show.